Welcome to this week's edition of Field the Draft. I'm John Sirenides, and I am joined by NFL Insider Ben Allbright this week. Ben is also a host and reporter for 850 AM and 94.1 FM KOA in Denver. Ben, first things first, thank you for taking the time to join us tonight, sir. Much appreciated, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem. I apologize that you guys are getting a little bit of a road trip with me here it's sunny Denver right now, but I'm on my way into the broadcast studio, so it's the best I could do.
No, listen, man, we greatly appreciate your time, and I know that it's going to be a jam-packed, information-filled period of time that we are together here, my friend. All right, let's just jump right into it. First things first, I want to get your thoughts on the Sam Darnold trade. Did Carolina pay too much to get him? Did the Jets get enough in return? What were your thoughts on that deal?
I thought it was a pretty fair deal. There were a couple of teams that were kind of in on Darnold. The ones that Carolina price tag got to a certain point that they got out. The Broncos, among them. I think it was a good deal for both teams. Carolina was at the point where they knew what Teddy Bridgewater wasn't, and they've been aggressively shopping him for a couple of weeks. And Teddy's kind of a guy. He's more of a spot start guy in the league. I mean, he's never had a season in which he's had more than 15 touchdowns. In fact, last year was the first season he had 15 touchdowns. And so, you kind of got a guy who's known for not being all that great in the red zone, and it just isn't a big time producer. And so I think they wanted to try something else. They were really all in on Watson, but once the legal stuff came down, Carolina kind of got between a rock and a hard place. They didn't really care for a lot of the QBs in this draft. There's one they like, and I'll tell you, if he's still there at 8, they take him. But other than that, I think they just decided, hey, look, let's give Sam Darnold a chance. We'll reassess after the year. And if Sam Darnold go after if Deshaun's legal, go after him. If not, then there's always the draft next year. So I think that the way that they're looking at this is it's really like a low risk, potentially high reward move, and I think it wasn't a bad one.
No, I agree. Now they did pick up his 5th-year option. Were you surprised by that?
No, I mean, that's what you're going to do. You're going to tie yourself to the guy for 2 years, no matter what. And that's a smart move to make. I think that if it doesn't work out or whatever, yeah, he's a super pricey backup or bridge quarterback next year if it doesn't work out. But you're out from under that after one more year, so it's really not that big a deal.
Well, earlier today, it was interesting. You tweeted your thoughts about the 49ers picking at 3. And you talked about the fact that you did not think that, or at least you didn't believe that Mac Jones would be the guy there. Why don't you think that they would take Mac Jones? Or is it just simply because you view Lance and Fields higher on your personal quarterback list than him? Or is it just a situation where those guys are better scheme fits than him and you don't see San Francisco taking him?
I'm sorry you cut out a little bit there. I'm trying to move here into a better spot for the internet. I apologize again, but you cut out a little bit there, and I didn't quite hear what you had to say.
Earlier today, you tweeted out that you didn't believe the 49ers were going to take Mac Jones. Why is that? Why don't you believe some of the speculation out there that San Francisco could end up taking Mac Jones? Why do you think that they could potentially go in another direction? All right, we appear to have lost Ben, so we're going to give Ben a chance to come back here and join us, hopefully when he's in a better spot. Again, Ben did tweet out today that he doesn't believe that the 49ers are going to draft Mac Jones, that he thinks that they're going to go in another direction. And I think that there's a lot of people, and we did lose Ben there. Hopefully he can join us again. Here he is. Hello, sir.
Okay, let's try that again. You were asking the question about the Niners at 3. I apologize. I had to get myself in a little better spot here. I think we've got better signal now.
So the Niners at 3, you tweeted out earlier today that you don't believe that they're going to take Mac Jones at 3. Why is that? Do you just think that a guy like Fields or a guy like Lance might be better fits for them schematically?
Well, I don't know that they are or aren't. People that I've talked to believe that it could go another way. I don't think that they're 100% on who they're taking just yet. I think Mac is in the conversation, but people I've talked to believe differently. And I've tried calling some people. I tried calling some assistants over there with the 49ers, and And these are guys that would tell me, and they have no clue. Like, they're like, yeah, we had some conversations or whatever. We don't know what Kyle or John are thinking, because like we just don't know. So, I've tried to talk to them about that, but I've in those conversations also gleaned some things about, kind of the way the Niners look at the quarterback position, and the way that they look at their roster construction now. And based on those conversations, I would say it's Lance, but I don't think anybody out there knows. I think there's this giant media push for Mac Jones, and I would say he's in the conversation, but I don't know that he's the guy. I really don't. I've seen, and what I tweeted out was, I have personally, with my own ears, heard an NFL scout say that, Mac Jones could be the next Tom Brady. And I've personally heard with my own ears, an NFL scout who said Mac Jones could be the next Brian Hoyer. So there's a diversity of opinion on what that looks
range.
You're right. Yeah. It's just like, wow, that literally narrows it down to almost nothing. So it's interesting to kind of see the diversity of opinion on him. I think Mac could be okay. I think he'll be an okay guy. I think he's probably Andy Dalton in the pros. Probably.
He's the words out of my mouth.
Yeah, he's less athletic than Andy was. Andy was actually kind of an athlete, and could run the ball a little bit, but coming out. So he's less athletic. Andy Dalton. He's what Andy Dalton is now, basically. And so, right. There's a place for that in the NFL. I mean, if you got a good defense, you can make the playoffs and make a little noise with something like that. I just don't know that Mac Jones is ever going to be the put a team on his back kind of guy. And for me, I would have to have no talent at the quarterback position to be able to draft somebody like that. And you look at what the Niners have, and I know that they blame Jimmy G for that Super Bowl loss, but to me, it feels like trading up to get Mac Jones is like moving from Jimmy G to Jimmy H. Like it's the same thing. Like what does Mac Jones give you that Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't?
Right. Yeah, it's a fair point. Yeah, it's a fair point. Now, you mentioned Jimmy G. Do you see any scenario where they trade him, or do you think they hold on to him and let this young quarterback, and I hate this term, but it's an easy term to use, let this young quarterback marinate for a year, let Jimmy G hold things down, and then they move on to the new quarterback in 2022?
I think it's very possible. People I've talked to, the Niners have not put Jimmy Garoppolo out on the trade market. They've not, which is interesting because they were in on Sam Darnold too. They've not put him out there on the trade market. They've not made him available. They haven't really talked to teams about it. So that interests me in the sense, and what that says is that they're looking at that. They're looking at him as a bridge guy. They're looking at him the way the Chiefs looked at Alex Smith when they went out and got Pat Mahomes. There's some value to that. I don't think that it's particularly a bad idea. And maybe Jimmy Garoppolo can kind of play himself into being more valuable this coming season, knowing that that's what would be happening. So I think there's value to that. I think that's the direction they're on, but again, they're being super, super tight-lipped over there, and guys who, I know, who lived in Denver and all that kind of stuff, guys who I know that are on that staff, super, super tight-lipped right now.
Yeah. And again, it's set up for them to take a developmental guy like Trey Lance, who needs a year to sit and learn and get his feet wet. It could be a guy like that. I mean, the talent is there. It's immense. The size, plus arm strength, the athleticism. But again, it's that time of year, right? We're 3 weeks out from round one, 3 weeks from tonight. It's now, there's one or two ways this is going to go, right? It's either speculation season and stuff just gets thrown out there. For example, this week, now all of a sudden, Justin Fields' work ethic is an issue, or teams are mum. They're not saying anything. Obviously, the quarterbacks are the crown jewel of this draft. If I asked you to rank the top 5 quarterbacks in this class, the 5 guys that we assume are going to go in the first round, how would you rank them?
Well, that's a tricky question because, who am I drafting for? It depends on the fit. I think
we're going to get to that because I'm going to have you put your GM hat on here in a second, my friend.
Okay. In a vacuum, I'm a little bit different. I know of a couple of teams that have Zach Wilson QB1, and I would be one of those people. I think that Zach Wilson is. I liken him to Tony Romo coming out. That's who he reminds me of.
It's a great call.
Yeah, I think he could be something in the pros. Trevor Lawrence would be my number 2, but I'm the thing that I'm scared about with him is that thin frame. Trevor Lawrence takes a lot of hits. And being 6'5", 6'6", 213 pounds is rail thin. I mean, that's a body of a high school small forward, not an NFL quarterback.
Right.
Right. And so that it bugs me. I mean, that's something that bothers me. And everybody laughed at that when we talked about Teddy Bridgewater coming out being skinny, and you saw what happened with that. For me, It's one of those things I worry about. Is Trevor Lawrence a great prospect? Yeah, he's a good quarterback. He's probably going to be a good quarterback in the league. But the idea that injury is not a part of evaluation is patently false. You have to kind of think about that in the back of your mind, because the best ability in football is availability. And if you're injured, then I'm not getting any productivity out of you. So, I think you have to factor that in. And then after that, it really is kind of dealer's choice. Do you like Justin Fields? Do you like Trey Lance? I gamble on the tools on Lance because I think Lance is the superior athlete, and I think he's got the superior arm. So I gamble that, I understand that he's raw and that he's going to need more time. But if I don't think that I can squeeze the maximum amount of talent out of him, why am I even employing the quarterback coach that I have? I'm going to take that dude's 25 best throws, put him on a DVD, and throw it at my quarterback coach and say, make him do that every play. And if my quarterback coach can't do that, I'm going to find a quarterback coach that can. So I gamble on Trey Lance. And then fourth, I would have Justin Fields. My gripe with Justin Fields, and I've talked to people about this, has nothing to do with work ethic or whatever that could say. I have two gripes with Justin Fields. One, he struggles identifying coverages and identifying the blitz. If you go back and look at the Indiana tape, and every time that they were bringing, they would show boundary pressure, but they'd bring field, and he would just sit there and just eat it. Like he didn't know, like he just didn't understand what was happening post snap. And and you saw it in the Indiana tape. Like he just didn't get it. And the other thing is he holds the ball too low. Now, part of that is a function of the Ohio State offense. They run those vertical option routes. I mean, that's a part of the offense is naturally going to happen. But part of it is he has to like see it, throw it kind of thing. And that bugs me a little bit on a couple levels. So I'm not saying he can't be a star in the NFL, but I'm saying that some of the lack of criticism that he gets bugs me a little bit, because those are two major things. The quarterback has to be able to do those things, and he does not do those well. And that's not saying he can't improve, but as it stands right now, that's where he's at. So, and then I would have Mac Jones a distant fifth. As kind of just a guy. He's a guy you bring in. He's probably somewhere between a lower third of the league starter and a spot start guy. You can win with him in the same way that the Baltimore Ravens run with like Trent Dilfer. Not that he's going to be a turnover machine like Dilfer, but you get the idea. He's kind of more of a limited guy who, in a pinch you can get through with him, and if you got a great defense, you're going to pick up some wins. But he's never going to put a team on his back. I don't think. I mean, maybe he turns into the next Tom Brady, and I look like an idiot. But right now, I don't see it. I see just a guy, and so he would be QB5 in this class.
Yeah, and I think the Tom Brady comp is more about their path to getting to this point. They had a similar path. His path is similar to Brady's at Michigan. There was a bunch of talented guys in front of him. He finally gets his chance, and he shines. But yeah, I think it ends there. I think the comparison ends there. All right, let's take a look at the top 10. Obviously, there was some speculation this week that the Atlanta Falcons are entertaining offers to trade down. If you were a general manager in this draft, and you were the general manager for the Falcons, the Lions, the Panthers, the Dolphins, right? If you were a GM for any of these teams, what would you do? Would you stand pat and draft a player, or would you slap the for sale sign on the pick and move it if the right offer came along? So let's start with the Falcons at 4.
Okay, well, who got picked third then? Because we know Lawrence and Wilson are going to go 1-2. Who got picked third?
Well, let's say hypothetically that San Francisco works out Justin Fields next week. They like him, and he's the guy. So Lance and Jones are on the board.
Okay, yeah. If I'm Atlanta, it's a two-player race here, and I happen to know it's a two-player race at this point. Terry Fontenot really loves Trey Lance. Your head coach really loves Pitts, and you got to have a discussion. One of you guys got to convince the other one that you're right. Me personally, if I'm a general manager, I gamble on the quarterback. We got an older quarterback in Matt Ryan, and I understand that we're tied to him for the next 2 years, but we got to let Trey Lance marinate anyway. So for me, I'm going to go ahead and gamble on the quarterback, even though I think Pitts is an all-world talent. I'm going to gamble on the quarterback because if it doesn't work out, I need to know within a year or two when I'm going to go be replacing Matt Ryan if I need to go to the well again.
Now, if you're the Cincinnati Bengals at 5, what do? Do you stand pat and take the offensive tackle and give Joe Burrow the protection? Maybe take a receiver, maybe Pitts if he falls to you? Or are they another team that should consider moving down?
Again, like Pitts is an all-world talent, but at the same time, I'm looking at that offensive line and what happened to Burrow last year, and I'm saying, man, this is a problem. I'm probably trading back, actually, out of 5. I'm trying to convince one of those other guys to come up for a quarterback or Pitts. I trade back out of there personally, and then I'm looking at developing my offensive line with those extra picks. The problem for the Cincinnati Bengals is that, like, a lot of people project Penei Sewell there. And I'm like, man, Jonah Williams was the best offensive lineman they have, and he's the left tackle already.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know why you're going out there and getting Penei Sewell when you need to address the other positions. Why not get a Slater who's more versatile and can play other positions along that line if you're going to do that? So, and if you're going to do that, trade back. Maybe you can pick up Slater, a few picks later and get some extra capital.
Now at 6, we have to assume the Dolphins are going to stand pat and probably address the receiver position, right?
Yes, a pass catcher of some sort, either Pitts, Smith, or Chase.
All right, now at 7, Detroit. Interesting that they're a team that I think could go either way here. Do you see this new regime there putting the for sale sign on the door, or do they stand pat and take a player, maybe a Micah Parsons? They could use some help on defense.
I tell you this, if there's a certain quarterback, if he falls in their lap, they take him. I wouldn't, but they would. That said, I think they stand pat. And I think they do go Micah Parsons. I think that just makes the most amount of sense. They need help all over the place. Parsons is a guy Dan Campbell will like. Parsons off the field is a problem, and he's kind of got a weird mindset. There's a bit of a kind of a psychopathy there, but it kind of works for Dan Campbell.
It works, right.
It works in that. So to me, that's a match made in heaven. If there's a one coach that you are like absolutely like, yeah, this dude and this dude's weirdo mentality fit this other weirdo mentality. Like, I feel like those two are a match made in heaven. So if I'm the Detroit Lions, if we're convinced that Micah Parsons off-field stuff is okay, we're taking him.
Now at 8, Carolina, do they stand pat and take a player? Do they look to trade down and recoup some of the capital they lost in the Sam Darnold trade?
I think they explore all options, and it depends on what falls in their lap at that point. If it's me, and I'll tell you this, Matt Rule loves his offensive linemen, so Slater would definitely be in play here. But if it's me, you're also looking at the trade down. Does anybody want to come up? Is their quarterback still there? Anybody want to move up? The Broncos are right after us. They might be on a quarterback. If there's anybody left, do we come up and do that? So that's what I would look at. I would look at moving back and then try to keep working on my offensive line personally. Protect Sam Darnold. Give him enough time to throw. Give him the one thing he's never had in the NFL, protection. But I think that I think they're going to stand pat, and I think it's going to wind up being Slater.
All right, I have to do this while I have you on, and I agree with you about Slater and the versatility. I think he'd be a great scheme fit there. I have to ask you this. I wasn't, but I'm going off the script. Sorry, my friend. Drew Lock, is he the future of the Denver Broncos, or will John Elway try to move up and possibly take a quarterback in this draft, or at least explore it?
Well, Elway's not even in charge anymore. George Payton's general manager now. Elway doesn't make any of the decisions at all.
Front office.
Yeah. Elway's not even making the decisions now. If it were Elway, I would say yes. Locke is the guy at least this season. With Payton, I think they want to hedge. I think they're looking at that. If the right quarterback fell, they would do it. I don't think they're going to trade up for the quarterback. I don't. I think if the right one fell in their lap, they'd take it. But I don't think they're trading up. That it could change. They're not done with their board. They're not done with all their with looking at all these guys either yet. But as it sits right now, that's the gut feeling I get. I think that their preference would be to trade back. I think their preference would be to build a war chest, move back, get some extra picks, that kind of thing, and go from there. Maybe trade back in the mid-teens, early 20s, and you can look at some of those inside backers, a Najee Harris. There's a couple of different things they could look at there.
Potentially.
I don't think they're on a corner, man. I really don't. Since they brought in Darby and they brought in Fuller, I don't think they're on a corner. I think they'll get one in this draft, but I don't think it's a priority to them. They brought Parnell Motley in toward the end of the season last year. They drafted Ojemudia. They had St. Bassey, who played extended time last year. And then Nate Hairston, who they waived today, but is going to be back tomorrow. It's just one of those like avoid paying the veteran signing bonus against the cap kind of deals where they waive him and bring him back. So they're going to bring him back tomorrow. But I think for them, I think that if they're taking a DB, I think they're looking safety because Kareem Jackson's on that 1-year deal and he's old. So they got to figure something out there. So if they're looking for a DB, I think that's the direction they're looking. Maybe a Richie Grant or a Morig.
Right. You just took the two guys out of my mouth. Yep.
So yeah, I think those are the guys they're looking at. But I think that in an ideal world, they would trade back. They were sniffing around the Watson thing once the legal stuff, they were all the way out on that. They're not going to trade for Teddy Bridgewater's contract, but if he were to get released, I think they'd look at it on a bottom of the barrel type deal. There's a couple other guys out there like Gardner Minshew or Nick Foles they might bring in as a hedge, but I don't think that they see I think they like Drew Lock, but don't love him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
He's the girl they're dating for now. But if a hotter girl comes along, they'd be willing to. They're not trying to dump her, but if a hotter girl comes along, they consider it.
Right. And, look, admittedly, I was a big Drew Lock guy coming out of Missouri, and I typically don't love guys like Drew Lock with that size. I love the release and the plus arm strength, but it has been a challenge there for him. It's been a consistency thing, right? Like there's flashes of it. You've seen it. And in his defense, and I kind of use this similar defense with Carson Wentz in a way when he was in Philadelphia. In his defense last season, he didn't have all of the pieces around him that they put together to play with him. So it'll be interesting to see with a healthy Cortland Sutton and with a healthy skill group how he plays this season. Now, I'm going to go to the middle of the first round real quick. If you're the Patriots, Bears, WFT, the Washington football team, Cowboys, or who was the other team I had? I apologize. Cowboys, Patriots, Bears, Broncos, we talked about. So let's just stick with Cowboys, Patriots, Washington football team, and the Bears. If you're the GM of those teams, what do you do? Stand pat, take a player, or do you explore moving up? Let's start with the Patriots.
I think for the Patriots, it depends on what quarterbacks come available out of that first group, because they've got their eye on a pair of them, and if either one of them came free, I think they'd look at it. Other than that, I think you're looking at, seeing if a pass catcher slips through, and there's several other things they could look at. But I feel like that's kind of the direction. I don't think they're moving up unless it's for a quarterback. In fact, I don't think anybody's moving up unless it's for a quarterback, unless somebody just feels froggy and wants to jump for Pitts. But I don't really see that. I think trading up is terribly inefficient. When you look at the what you have to give up for the pick and then the adjusted value you get out of what you give up, it's wildly inefficient. So, I don't think that they would trade up unless it's for a quarterback. If a pass catcher, like I said, Waddle fell in their lap, something like that, they might roll with that. They're still looking to shore all that up and everything. So that's a possibility. As far as Dallas goes, I think they're on a corner. 100%. It's either Surtain or Horn there. So the question is which one really at 10. So I don't think, I saw something today about trading up for Kyle Pitts. I don't think that's even in the cards, but I think they're on a corner there at 10, and I think they know they're going to have their choice of Surtain or Horn there at 10.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think the consensus when it comes to Jerry Jones is that he falls in love with offensive skill players. But to his credit, he's been pretty patient in drafting and developing that team. Yeah, I know it hasn't necessarily translated on the field in terms of success, but there was that time period there where there was that run where they took back-to-back drafts. They went offensive line and they fortified the offensive line. He is willing to address the needs of the team. It doesn't mean because they took CeeDee Lamb last year that all of a sudden he's going to be looking to move up and give up a second or a future first to move up 4 or 5 spots to secure Pitts. I tend to agree with you on that. Washington football team and the Bears, both of them in theory need quarterbacks. Do you see them potentially moving up, or do they stand pat and take players?
If somebody Washington believes in, I don't think they'll move up, though. I really don't. I think they're going to stay and see if anything kind of falls their direction. They've got some other needs, too. And, I've known some of the guys over there in that organization for a while. Ron Rivera, his class act. Eric Stokes works over there. He's a good dude. I think they want to be a little bit more patient. I know Dan Snyder is all like just, we'll throw any money at anything and all that kind of stuff. But I think they want to be a little bit more patient. I think they've established a certain culture there, and I think they want to continue doing what it is that they're doing. I think Washington's on the right track that they haven't been on for years, despite the ownership. So I think they stand pat and just kind of take the value that falls in their lap. The Bears, I could see moving up. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bears and the Broncos worked out some kind of deal. If Denver wants to go backwards, maybe you do a pick swap and you send a Roquan and a Nick Foles, and that covers all the Broncos' bases. And all of a sudden, you get that backup quarterback. Foles has a relationship with Pat Shurmur from their time in Philly. Roquan fills that other inside backer spot that the Broncos need. And then the Broncos can go backwards and maybe look at edge rush depth, a corner, or a running back like Najee Harris.
No, and that's a great point. It doesn't necessarily have to be future draft capital in order to make that move. I'm sure there'll be some, but you can probably include players in a trade like that. If the Patriots were to move up, who are the 2 guys that you think they would be interested in potentially?
Well, Mac Jones will be one of them. I can tell you that. I know they like Zach Wilson a lot, but we all know he's not going to get past 2. So
right.
I think that's kind of where it's at. There's like I said, there's quite a few teams that have Zach Wilson as the best quarterback in this draft, and from what I understand, the Patriots I think are one of them. So I think that I think if you look at what Bill Belichick has done in the past, what they're able to do, the Patriots have not historically been a great drafting team with Bill Belichick. They've really been a team that identified free agent talent, got those guys to take a discount to play with Tom Brady, and built around that. And they've made some good
By the
draft
way, not to
choices.
cut you off, Ben, that is literally a heretic thing to say here. I will get people that will say to me, who the hell is this guy? What is he talking about? And Bill, we trust, and all this other stuff. But I'll tell you, there's also a lot of people around here that would agree with you.
Well, I'll tell you, the perception around the league is that, is that Bill doesn't draft all that well. Now, he's drafted well on the defensive side of the ball, but he's had his misses too. I mean, he used a second rounder on Duke Dawson and cut him after a year. You go back and look at the offensive side. Yeah, you go back and look at the offensive side and Chad Jackson. I mean, that was a horrendous pick. So, it's not like that. I mean, everybody has misses, and I'm not trying to dog about Belichick. He's the greatest coach of all time. But, at the same time, it weirded me out how many people always pursue the Patriots front office people for their drafting. And I'm like, but this team doesn't draft particularly well. Like, it's not like it's the Ravens or the Packers that knock it out of the park most drafts. Like, those are the guys you would want, right?
The Steelers or the Colts.
Right, but they go after, but New England had a winning culture for so long, and so I can understand it from that perspective. But yeah, no, I think that, if the Patriots are moving up, I think it'd be for Mac or Zach. I really do. Maybe Fields, but not the conversations that I've had didn't lead me to believe that they were that big on Fields. So we'll see.
Now, I have to ask the proverbial draft buzz question here as we wrap things up, but. What are some things you're hearing around the league in terms of draft buzz and teams possibly moving up, moving down, players moving up, moving down? One of the things that I think is fascinating about this draft is this quarterback class and that it's so top-heavy, right? I mean, I'm sure you talk to people around the league. Other than maybe Davis Mills, there's probably not another guy in this draft right now that projects as a starter within the first 2 years in the league, maybe down the road. But what are some things you're hearing in regards to possible movement, but also players, quarterbacks in particular?
Well, let's start with the QBs. I don't think there's anybody out of the Big Five that's projected as a starter. Maybe, like you said, Mills and Mond, I think, are the next two. But after that, I don't think so. There's some people that really like Kyle Trask. You can go back and look at his tape, though. I don't know why. So I think that, if I had those kind of weapons, my grandmother could throw for that much yardage.
Well, and it's funny that you say that. I talked about that with Dane Brugler, and he pointed something out to me that is so true. And I've been coaching football almost 30 years. I've coached quarterbacks for a long time, and he throws a heavy ball. And then you talk about the lack of mobility in the pocket, his inability to recreate the pocket. That's the problem with him. And I love the national media. Oh, he answered a lot of questions at his pro day. Did he, though? I don't know. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I used to see it with him, but I really don't see it anymore.
What questions are you asking at a pro day where you're throwing in shorts against air? Like, what question are you resolving at that point? Like, the pro days were only useful to me because what I would do is I would go ask the equipment guy, or I would go ask the trainer, the weight room guy. I'd go ask the staff, and I'd be like, hey, what do you think about this guy? All the people that could never help him with his career, how did he treat those people? That's what I want to know. I don't care how you threw, I don't care that you threw a deep post on the run, in shorts with no defender in your face. I mean, sweet, I can do that. But tell me who you are as a person. Tell me what the work ethic is. And don't give me the Pablum head coach quote. Give me the guy who has to pick your dirty jersey up off the floor in the locker room because you don't walk it over to the barrel. You know what I mean? So that for me, that's what pro day was. I'm going around asking all the other people, like all the little guys, hey, who is this guy? And they'll tell you. They will tell you who they are. They'll be honest about it because it doesn't matter to them. They'll tell you. So if the guy was, a jerk for 4 years, you're about to find out. So for me, that's all pro days are good for. Going back to the quarterback, so like I said, I think Mond and Davis Mills, the only two that have any real day two buzz. Jamie Newman is probably the other guy. He's got the big the upside, but he's like Trey Lance. He's raw. It's a big time project. It's going to be, he's not going to be playing year one. So, that's kind of a question there. Teams moving up and down. I mean, there's a lot of teams that are kind of exploring a lot of things. I think the main thing that I've kind of in conversations I've had about this draft that's going to be different is I think anybody with a medical question is going to drop like a rock. I think people with medical, because you just don't have the combine rechecks, even though they had like the pseudo combine recheck like this week. I just think that a lot of these teams are not putting a lot of faith that these medicals are as thorough as they would be. And if they have any questions, they're just like scrubbing that. And and letting it go. So that's why guys like Caleb Farley, who people were like mocking to like number 9 and all that kind of stuff, he's not going to go 9. I wouldn't be surprised if he got out of the first round, but probably somewhere in the 20s or 30s overall is probably his sweet spot. But yeah, players that have medical questions and stuff like that, those are going to be the ones that drop. And, there are players I think that get a lot of buzz from, you're talking about national media buzz and stuff. And I find this stuff funny because you get guys like Fields, who people tell you has no weakness. And I'm like, man, I see some pretty glaring ones. That's not to say he can't be a star, but I see some. Right. Okay. Another guy's like Penny Sewell. Everybody talks about him as this franchise, can't miss left tackle. You go watch the tape and you see a guy that lunges all the time and gets out over his skis a little bit. And so like, you wonder, you're like, wait a minute now, who's saying what? What's the truth here? And you talk to teams and there's teams that think that Cincy could maybe take him, but most of those guys think that Penny Sewell's going to be there in the teens. So, wow. I think that there are some players that, fans and media have maybe hyped up a little bit that, you get the groupthink echo chamber going on, and it doesn't allow you to kind of see the broader picture of things. And then, fans they hate criticism of players. Like, it's rough crapping on a little kid, crapping on, and I say a little kid, but I mean, crapping on a kid because that's what they are coming out of college, Yeah. So it's rough to see that crapping on a guy who, wasn't making any money for what he was doing. And so people are hesitant to criticize them in the ways that they should, because you need to be looking at this differently. Not how do I pick the player's up ego and give him a pat on the backside. It's just, is this guy going to cost me my job? Yeah. And so like you need to that's the way you need to evaluate players, through the lens of, is this guy going to cost me my job? And and kind of go from there. And so I think there's a couple players like that. I think Sewell's one of them that you're going to go a little bit later than people suspect. Caleb Farley certainly, and then there's a guy like Jamin Davis who's going to go way earlier than everybody thinks he is. I think everybody's just about caught up now. Yeah. I've seen. I normally I avoid the mock drafts, but I see stuff come across my timeline. So, and then forever I was seeing like he was a day 3 guy or whatever, and I'm like, okay, no, that's laughably absurd. It's going to go like in the late first, early second. And so now I think people have kind of caught up on that. And there's a bit of an overcorrection, but it's fun. Like the next 10 days are when the meat of the information kind of comes out for me. Because as these teams start to set their board, finish cross checks, all that kind of stuff, we start to get a lot of that stuff leaking out a little bit more. So I'm hoping this year, even without my ability to take people to the bar and use the social lubricant and alcohol to get them talking, I'm still hoping we can get some good information this year.
Hey, real quick before we wrap it up, 2 players you really like in this draft that may not necessarily be household names.
Cisco out of Syracuse. That dude if he can stay healthy, is going to be an absolute star in this league. Ball hawking safety, absolute star. Love his game. Jalen Darden, the receiver out of North Texas, do it all, 5-tool receiver. He's more of a slot guy, but punt returns, kick returns. You can use him jet motion. You can put him up in the backfield and kind of give him that jet back kind of thing going on. You can move him out of the slot as a receiver. I think that dude's going to be a star in the league. I think he's one of those undersized guys that'll actually pan out. So both those guys are kind of like hashtag my guys in this draft.
Well, we met on Twitter talking X's and O's and talking football, and I've been talking to you now for over 2 years, and I'm glad that I reached out to you, my friend. You are one of the best in the business, in my opinion. I wouldn't have you on this show if I didn't think you were, A, and B, you're always generous with your time, which also helps. But thank you for the insight, Ben. It was awesome. I'd love to do this with you again and have some fun. You got your show coming up here tonight, one of the best shows in Denver and one of the best football shows around, period, no matter where you live. Take a listen to it at 9 o'clock. So, Ben, thank you for taking the time, my friend. We'll talk to you down the road.
No, thank you, my friend. And anytime. You just hit me up. We'll do it again.
All right. Sounds good, Ben. Thanks for the insight. Take care, brother.
Take care.
Take care. That'll do it for this week's episode of Feel the Draft. I'm John Sirenides. Join us again next week as we inch one step closer to the NFL Draft. We'll break down the draft next week with the Draft Network's Paige Diamakos next week here on Feel the Draft. Take care.